Welcome to another Top 10 video. The Pokemon franchise has been around since I was a kid, and over the years there have been a ton of great Pokemon. Today I'm here to dial back the clock and talk strictly about the Pokemon you can meet in the original Pokemon games, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. The Kanto Region was the place where it all started. You had 151 potential Pokemon at your disposal, and used them to traverse the region while laying the smackdown on any gym leaders or Team Rocket members in your path. Exploring this great region was such a fun and memorable experience, complete with glitches and adventures. For this video, I'll mostly be talking about the abilities these Pokemon have access to in Gen 1. So Charizard mostly can't learn Fly yet, and Scyther can't learn a single bug attack. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications to all. Now let's begin counting down my top 10 Gen 1 Kanto Pokemon.
Number 10.
For the record, I'd like to start off by saying I am not a quote-unquote Gen 1er. Sure, I came into the franchise right from Gen 1, but Gens 2, 3, and 4 made a ton of positive changes to the franchise that vastly improved it. With this out of the way, you now see my reason for Scyther being so low on the list. Scyther was everyone's favorite bug Pokemon until Heracross came around. This dude is fast, powerful, can be taught Wing Attack, and is quite possibly the coolest looking Pokemon of all time. Scyther can only be caught in the Safari Zone of Pokemon Red, which can be a bit of a pain, but if you're lucky, you'll be able to catch one without too much difficulty and be on your way. Why is Scyther only rated as my number 10 Pokemon, you might ask? Well, despite being the best bug Pokemon in Gen 1, this dude can't learn a single bug attack, so he's got all the weaknesses that come with being a bug Pokemon, but not one single advantage. He's still a pretty powerful guy though, with the ability to use Sword Dance to massively buff his attack stat. He can lay waste to most enemies in only a single hit after using it.
Number 9.
Another great Sword Dance user, Farfetch'd is the most badass bird Pokemon Gen 1 had to offer. The only way to get Farfetch'd in Red and Blue is to trade someone a Spearow for her Farfetch'd in Vermilion City. But this is no ordinary Farfetch'd. You see, the Farfetch'd you get in this trade is none other than the legendary Bloodsport champion himself, Frank Dukes. This guy is handy for his ability to use Fly among other flying type benefits, but after using Sword Dance once or twice, Dukes will be doing the splits and speed bagging his opponent's balls, making them regret ever stepping foot in the Kumite. I may hate Sword and Shield, but I really do appreciate this guy getting some love with his new evolution, Surfetch'd. For being the derpiest badass bird in the game, Farfetch'd easily secures the number 9 spot on the list.
Number 8.
In some of the newer games, they're always giving you alternate type Pokemon to what you started with. Some would say this is to better balance the games, but I would say this is the wimp's way out. If you started with Charmander or Bulbasaur in Red or Blue, you would have to bide your time and wait until you get the good rod so you can catch yourself a Poliwag. Poliwag may not be much, but he learns Water Gun at level 19, can be taught Bubble Beam, and most importantly evolves into Poliwhirl, who when traded, becomes the almighty Poliwrath. Poliwrath is a water and fighting type, who can learn all the best water attacks as well as the powerful counter attack. Once you slap Surf on him and Psychic if you'd like, Poliwrath is my favorite non-starter water Pokemon in Gen 1. For being incredibly versatile as well as an all-around strong boy, Poliwrath deserves its place at number 8.
Number 7.
Probably one of the more overlooked electric Pokemon until Sun and Moon gave him a badass alternate Alolan form, Raichu is for some reason constantly living in the shadow of his younger brother Pikachu. But Raichu is better in every single way. Make sure you keep him as a Pikachu until he's level 43 so he naturally learns Thunder, then power this bad boy up with a Thunderstone so he can evolve into the badass Raichu. Raichu doesn't just look cool and intimidating, his speed and electric attacks are no joke as well. There was nothing more frightening as a kid than making it to Lieutenant Surge with my Wartortle and him pulling out his powerful Raichu. For being my second favorite electric type in Gen 1, Raichu lands at the 7th spot on the list.
Number 6.
Speaking of Lieutenant Surge, I always make sure to evolve my Geodude into a Graveler when it's time to throw down with him. Graveler is my favorite rock and ground type Pokemon in Gen 1 because he looks cool, is fairly powerful and defensive, and can learn Rock Throw and Earthquake naturally. Earthquake is still one of the most powerful ground attacks in the franchise, and it all started with Graveler for me. Graveler has always been the workhorse in my party. I always teach him strength, and he's always there to swap in when I need someone to be able to tank some damage or nuke an electric type. Sure, Golem may be stronger, but when it comes to cool factor, I personally feel like Graveler completely obliterates him. Nothing brings more joy to me than avenging my boy Dukes against an electric type with this gravelly four-armed badass, which is why he landed in the 6th spot on the list.
Number 5.
Whether you think of him as the final boss or the final reward of Gen 1, Mewtwo is an absolute force to be reckoned with and can only be found after beating the Elite Four and becoming the Pokemon Champion. This dude is the most powerful Pokemon in the game. He starts off at level 70 and has Psychic, Barrier, and Recover, making him the douchiest Pokemon to fight against. You see, in Gen 1 there was no special attack and defense stat, only a stat called Special. So by making Mewtwo a powerful special attacker, they juiced up his special stat, which also means his special defense would be equal to his offense. Usually my way around this is to hit psychic Pokemon with physical attacks, but Mewtwo has Barrier, which massively buffs his defense stat as well. This guy is a beast. He's been more recently given some love in Pokemon X and Y as well, where he's returned with 2 Mega Forms, one that makes him an even more powerful psychic attacker, and the other that turns him into a psychic and fighting type. Mewtwo is possibly my favorite legendary Pokemon of all time. He's got a decent amount of lore in the games, being an attempt to clone Mew gone wrong. It's no wonder he made it to the number 5 spot on the list.
Number 4.
Gengar is a Pokemon who is well known and liked for his power and looks, but in Gen 1 he's missing some of the attacks and abilities that people love him for today. He's still a massive asset to have in your party with the ability to hypnotize your opponents to sleep and then use Dream Eater to devour their dreams, dealing a decent amount of damage and using it to heal himself as well. Another thing I love about Gengar is if you use the Mew glitch on a different trainer, you can get him right after you arrive at Cerulean City. He's great for negating normal attacks, which helps you in facing off against Team Rocket and other random trainers, and he has some great stats and possible psychic moves he can learn as well. Nightshade is pretty strong when you first catch him too, which when used properly can weaken Pokemon to a certain amount of health in order to catch easier. It's always a toss-up for me between Haunter and Gengar because I honestly prefer the way Haunter looks, especially in red and blue, but Gengar's power is more than worth evolving for.
Number 3.
Can you believe we're already into the top 3? Now we're getting to some Pokemon that are pretty much in my party no matter which game I'm playing. These 3 are some of my favorites of all time, starting at number 3 with Charizard. Everyone's favorite flying non-dragon dragon. As much as Charmeleon sucks for not learning any decent fire attacks after he got Ember as Charmander, Charizard is easily worth toughing it out for. Charizard has some crazy speed and special stats which boost the power of his already powerful moves like Flamethrower, Fire Spin, and Fire Blast. On top of these great moves, Charizard can also learn Counter, Hyper Beam, and in Pokemon Yellow, he can even learn Fly. For being a fan favorite all these years, beating the crap out of any Pokemon that stands at its path, and looking cool as heck while doing it, Charizard Fire Blasts its way to the number 3 spot.
Number 2.
We're really getting to some heavy hitters now. I absolutely love Electabuzz. I love Electivire even more, but he didn't show up as an evolution until Gen 4. Electabuzz is easily my second favorite Gen 1 Pokemon, and Electivire is definitely like a top 3 to 5 Pokemon of all time for me as well. Electabuzz is a powerful and fast electric Pokemon who can throw down with physical attacks about as good as he can with special attacks. I always make him a well-rounded Pokemon, giving him Thunder, Thunder Punch, as well as Psychic and Counter. Starting in Soul Silver and Heart Gold, he could also learn Fire Punch and Ice Punch, making him even more well-rounded. Electabuzz is super fast, allowing him to almost always defeat his opponents before they even get a turn in. With that, on top of his move versatility and all-around cool factor, Electabuzz stands strong in the number 2 position.
Number 1.
Here we are at the number 1 spot. Wartortle isn't just my number 1 Gen 1 Pokemon, he also happens to be my number 1 favorite Pokemon of all time. Starting with Squirtle in my first ever playthrough in Pokemon Blue, Wartortle was just a more badass version of Squirtle who had more power, speed, and defense. Learning intimidating moves like Bite and Skull Bash, whilst having access to the most powerful water attacks like Hydro Pump, Surf, and Bubble Beam make him a super powerful water Pokemon. I usually also like to round him out a bit better by teaching him Ice Beam for those pesky dragon types. This tough looking little edgelord is always willing to throw down against the best, and I always make sure I have one in my party by the end of each game. You may be asking, yeah, Wartortle is cool and all, but why Wartortle over Blastoise? Well, it all started in my first ever playthrough of Pokemon Blue when this badass Wartortle evolved into a giant head of cabbage. Blastoise looked horrible in the early games, and even today I still prefer the look and vibe of Wartortle over him. The only exception, I suppose, would be Mega Blastoise. His Mega form is so damn cool, and the power more than makes up for me having to evolve my favorite Pokemon of all time. So that's that! Wartortle's my favorite Pokemon of all time, so of course he was going to be my number 1 Pokemon of the Kanto region. Before we get to a couple of honorable mentions, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications to all. Check out some of my other top 10 videos right here on my channel as well. My first honorable mention is Zapdos. Back when I was a kid, I pretty much hated all flying types and bird Pokemon, but I've always loved electric types. So when I stumbled upon Zapdos in the power plant, he was pretty much my go-to Pokemon to teach fly. Now I have much more love for Farfetch'd, but back then, I had to have my boy Zapdos in the party in order to fly around the great region of Kanto. My final honorable mention goes to Mew for being the ultimate HM Mule. To get Mew, you have to trigger a series of small, easy-to-do glitches shortly after crossing the Nugget Bridge. Once I get him, I always load the little guy up with all the HMs that kinda suck in battle. This guy's a little cutie who's too handy to pass up, so next time you decide to play through Pokemon Red or Blue, be sure to look up how to get him. You can get him in Yellow as well, but the glitch is quite a bit more difficult to pull off. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Tell me who your favorite Gen 1 Pokemon are in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.